elected Hitler the dog catcher, let alone leader of the nation. Such is the clarity of historical hindsight. And with that clarity, I see the exact same mechanism that Hitler used at work here in this nation. The American people imagine themselves to be brave. They see themselves as the heroic Americans depicted by Western movies, the descendants of the fierce patriot warriors who had tamed the frontier and defeated the might of the British Empire. But in truth, by the dawn of the third millennium, the American people have become civilized and tamed, culturally obsessed with fine details in both science and society. Their self-image of bravery is both slave and slavery. Americans are required to behave as if they are brave, even when they are not. The American people assume they are safe. They live in a republic, after all, with strict laws regarding what the government can and, more importantly, cannot do. Their leader is a devoutly religious man. The reality is that the American people as individuals have lost their courage. The government prefers it that way, as a fearful people are easier to rule than a courageous one. But Americans don't wish to lose their self-image of courage. So when confronted with a situation demanding courage in the form of a government gone wrong, the American people simply pretend the situation does not exist. When the World Trade Towers collapsed, most Americans simply refused to believe suggestions that the attacks had been staged by parties working for the U.S. government itself. Americans were afraid to, even as news reports surfaced proving that the U.S. government had announced plans for the invasion of Afghanistan early in the year. Plans into which the attacks on the World Trade Towers, which angered the American people into support of the already planned war, fit entirely too conveniently. But so trapped are Americans by their belief in their own bravery that they will themselves to be blind to the evidence before their eyes, so that they can nod in agreement with the government while still imagining themselves to have courage, even as they avoid the one situation which most requires real courage, to stand up to the government's lies and deceptions. The vast majority of the American people, to them their own self-image, dependent on continuing blindness to the government's deceptions, never questions why Afghanistan would have done something so stupid as to attack the United States. And as a result, Americans find themselves in a war. Now, the U.S. government has requested temporary extraordinary powers specifically banned under constitutional law, but powers the government is claiming they need to have to deal with the terrorists. The American people, having already sold their souls to their self-delusions, are agreeing. The temporary powers recently conferred will be no more temporary in America than they were in Germany. The U.S. government knows they rule a nation of cowards. The government has had to spend the money to make the new war something cowards can fight. The government has decorated the troops with regalia to make them proud of themselves, further trapping them in their self-image. Talismans are added from orthodox religions and the occult to fill the soldiers with delusions of mythical strengths and an afterlife if they fall in battle. And finally, knowing that it takes courage to kill the enemy face to face, the United States government has spent vast sums of money on wonder weapons. Airplanes, submarines, ultra-long-range artillery, cruise missiles, guided missiles, weapons that kill at a distance, so that those doing the killing need not have to face the reality of what they are doing. As I mentioned above, Hitler was Time magazine's Man of the Year in 1938. Stalin was Time magazine's Man of the Year for 1939 and 1942. Both of these men, and many others, also celebrated by the media, were unimaginable monsters. The lesson from these facts is that it isn't easy to spot a genocidal tyrant when you live with one, especially one whom the press supports and promotes. Tyrants become obvious only when looking back after they have done becomes known. The German people did not stand up to Hitler because their media betrayed them, just as the American media is betraying the American people by willingly, voluntarily, even proudly abandoning its traditional role as watchdog against government abuse. It is the very nature of power that it attracts the sort of people who should not have it. The United States, as the world's last superpower, is a prize that attracts men and women willingly to do absolutely anything to win that power, and hence are also willing to do absolutely anything with that power once they have it. If one thinks about it long enough, one will realize that all tyrants, past and most especially present, must use deception of their population to initiate a war. No citizen of a modern industrialized nation will send their children off to die in a war to grab another nation's resources and assets, yet resources and assets are what all wars are fought over. The nation that wishes to initiate a war of conquest must create the illusion of an attack or a threat to start a war, and must always give their population of cowards an excuse never to question that carefully crafted illusion. It is naive, not to mention racist, to assume that tyrants appear only in other nations, and that somehow America is immune simply because, well, we're Americans. America has escaped the clutches of a dictatorship thus far only through the efforts of those citizens who, unlike the Germans of the 1930s, have the moral courage to stand up and point out where the government is lying to the people. Unless more Americans are willing to have that kind of individual courage, future generations may well look back on the American people with the same harshness of judgment which we look back on the 1930s Germans.
Presented by runtogold.com. This is from Adam Curry's Daily Source Code, number 791.
What we need right now is a clear message to the people of this country. This message must be read in every newspaper, heard on every radio, seen on every television. This message must resound throughout the entire interlink. I want this country to realize that we stand on the edge of oblivion. I want every man, woman, and child to understand how close we are to chaos. I want everyone to remember why they need us.
War and danger.
Continuing danger.
Hour of danger. Very, very dangerous world. A grave new threat.
Horrific acts of atrocities. Murderous regimes dedicating to killing us.